Welcome back, Mere Mortals. This is Juan, and I've got my co-host here, Kyrin, down.
We are the
Mere
party
Mortals, folks, podcast. Welcome back to another edition of the Musings, where we look back, week that was, the learnings, the insights, things we might bounce off each other, and, of course, to the folks out there as well. I want to be talking about my default assertiveness, and sometimes where it plays out well, where it does not play out well.
Okay, good.
As well as plugging the gaps. I'm
keen to hear that, man. That sounds fun. All right, I'm going to talk about finding comfort in silence. So a little bit about silence just in general. And then also maybe a little bit about the running that I've been doing recently and just a couple of observations that I'm coming to.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm going to kick mine off with the default assertiveness.
Yes, please.
So basically the impulse and default assertiveness. So as of late, and I won't get into the depths of it, but basically this whole past week, I have applied default assertiveness to a lot of things.
Yes.
And a lot of it has worked out really well. So I had this conversation, I'll be specific here, a conversation with people at work. And we were going to have what's called a retrospective in the work field. And that means you kind of retrospect in the week that was, or what pretty much what we do with Musings, but on a longer time frame and specifically about work. And we will check on both people and work perspective and processes, etc. But I was like just default assertive on taking control of absolutely almost everything. I was just like leading the conversation, doing things. Some people wanted to lead it another way, and I was just like kind of getting it along in a correct path. And it worked out really well. Like everyone enjoyed it. It was a great conversation. We got everything we wanted, like all the outcomes plus more. Awesome. All worked well. But then just as of late, there was another occurrence where someone personal, I was like, oh, okay, default assertive, like, this is how it's going to be done. You don't enjoy this path that I'm conversing in. Nope. This is what, that's going down. And you just find that the impulsiveness that comes with default assertiveness is good a lot of the times. But it can certainly be not good in a lot of the other times. So I'm starting to find more and more where does default assertiveness not work very well. And it tends to be more and more for me in the very close relationships, the close networks, more than the long networks. So if I was to think of Dunbar's number, I think even people within my 25 to 50 group, that would be maybe too close to home to use always default assertiveness, and maybe an empathetic view might need to be taken over to control it. And I say that because it is very easy for that default assertiveness to like push them out completely out of that group in favor of me getting something, being selfish in it, but not being maybe empathetic and getting something back in that sort of conversation. So trying to find, there's got to be a middle ground there, because I'm often a person that will take things to an extreme in that regard, and it works out well, but it can be oftentimes where it's like, oh no, that did not work well. And I can see it in the opposite side of things, like someone who might be really not default assertive and maybe blasé and whatever about something, something comes along, whatever, cool, or I'm not too fussed with it. And you can get, we've talked about it in the past, walked all over, people can just do what they want with you. So I don't know whether you have a thought on the downsides of being default assertive that I might still have not found yet. Because I find like, there's a couple of places where I've seen in the past where I'm like, okay, I'm deficient in this, in using default assertiveness well there.
Yeah. All right. Maybe one thing. So one thing that springs to mind is you might not realize what other people want when you're default assertive. So I've probably got the opposite thing, and I'd say almost the opposite problem in a way, which is a lot of times I'm not assertive. So if I go out to a restaurant with someone or something, I'm very eager to please. So if we're like sharing meals or something, pick what you want. I might like scratch off some items, but I'll leave it to the other person to choose the food or something, or the place that we're going to, or I'm just very eager to like let someone else take the reins in essence, because I want them to be happy. That's usually like the reason why.
That's where the mentality comes behind it, yes.
And doing that way, I think you do get a chance to understand more about people deeper and quicker, because you'll find out what they like and what they don't like, because they're almost forced to choose. So potentially you're losing out on valuable information that you could be sort of storing away somewhere, because you're like, no, we're going to go out here to eat whatever. And maybe you're picking it with them in mind, but maybe that's not what they want either. So that's one thing. I wanted to ask you as well, are you actively working on being default assertive though? So like when you come into these situations, is it just your personality, or do you sometimes think like, here's a really good place to be assertive, I'm going to get benefits from doing it?
No, it's definitely default by like personality default. So
okay, so
it's like
it's not like
it's existed.
working on default as well.
Yeah. So I think I was even trying to think about it the other day. Like where did that even stem from? Like where exactly did it begin to be like default assertive? And it would have been when I very first began speaking English, like to the point where I could actually use language and vocabulary to talk to people and be able to direct things. So that would have been maybe grade 5, grade 6, and even at the same time, probably when I also started playing soccer. So when I started playing soccer, I do remember being, like fine balance between being good enough that I could do things, having the vocabulary to talk with people. And I think that default assertive in the playing field was like it turned out well. So I was like, oh, maybe I should do this more. And I think that's from there it stemmed on doing a lot more stuff, and it's always like stuck around from there. But I would say now that assertiveness or the default nature of it is just bound to the personality of, I'm just going to do it. And I'm not even thinking about, this is a chance for me to be assertive. No, it's just like, yep, that happens. This is doing it. And I think that's where it gets into trouble sometimes, where I've got to almost be conscious of not being default assertive in the situations where it's much more close to home. So even like it might be fine to be default assertive in the workplace with some of the people that I look after, because I'm not even involved on a day-to-day basis with some of their actions. So if they come to me with a particular problem or something else relation, like I can be really default assertive and going like, talk through the problem, break it down, there's the issue, these are some of the next steps, move on. Like I'm not caring about like why it might have happened, like we're just getting through the solution. If it matters to find out the why, we'll find out the why, but it's just a very almost step outside of it. You're not looking at the emotions at play, you're just kind of seeing what's happened. But doing that all the time at the inner levels can prove a little bit harder.
Yeah. Here's another one that might be somewhat enlightening. So when I used to play soccer, once again, just not an assertive personality. I wasn't the one complaining about drills or saying like, we need to do this, or even, sometimes the coach would ask for input on like strategy or like who should go here, what should do that. And, most people are like more than willing to offer up their bullshit opinions. Like that's just what happens, whether they be really good or really bad, like that would come out. And I was constantly surprised that come the end of the year, I would get sort of, those sort of like team recognition awards right at the end of the year, which is, not most valuable player, but like player's player of the year. I got that a surprising amount of times, and I always was like, why? Like I didn't really make, it's not, I wouldn't say like I really made friends with anyone. There was a couple of things which are like personality wise, or which was just super consistent. Like I was always there. I rarely had bad games, but I rarely had really good games either. So sort of the middle of the road. But I think if I had to guess, it was because I didn't piss anyone off. Like it was sort of like just being almost like a neutral entity. And just being like a nice person. Like I wasn't
just existing.
Just existing.
See, that's where I get into the issue with it. And I get into the issue with it because, so is it that you want to just exist, or is it that you want to make more out of it? But I think that's an even deeper question around, why are you so important that you should be aiming for something greater, right? Than just existing and be able to like serving the world in general. So I think that can be very deep and philosophical. So I won't step it all the way down there. But I'm just going to think, like if I'm not being default in the things that I want to do because they're bettering me, then I'm just letting other people then move me around to a position that might not be what I want to do. Yeah. Kind of deal.
Yeah, I sort of get that. But I would,
I'm just thinking.
I would also argue like life's going to do that to you anyway. So if you have that mentality of like always trying to be, default assertive, try and get your way in essence, that's fine and all, and you make good progress in whatever it is that you're trying to do. But then also if you take that too far, like anything, if you take it too far, you'll end up being like, you get cancer or some shit, and it's like, well, how are you going to be default assertive? Default assertive battling my cancer.
I can imagine that. Though. I can imagine that. But it also makes me think, sometimes I reckon just all the time, super theoretical successful people, and by saying theoretically, it's like the people who you might think is successful. So in whatever form you want to call it, let's say most people would say maybe Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, successful in whatever terms you want to call them, money, things that they've accomplished, things that they give away, whatever. But like for sure, they've left some like warpath in their wake in terms of Elon leaving like his ex-wife, Jeff Bezos obviously divorcing from his wife. They're pretty like tough on people in terms of what they are. So like because they're going after what they want. So you got to sometimes think it's like, okay, well if you're dealing with everybody that way, like you are going to set a warpath to a lot of people who are going to be close to you, and like, are you going to regret that or not? So I'm more thinking, ooh, okay, there's some bits where I'm going to be default aggressive, and I am going to regret being that with particular people. So I've got to learn to not do that. But here's an example where, so my whole takeaway for me is, okay, there was something that happened this week where I was able to step back away from default assertive in a very, like, I thought about it deeply and be like, I am not going to be default assertive here. And it was in my CrossFit training. So that was the other one I was going to come up was this week I did my first CrossFit training session. And there's two options you can do with CrossFit. You can, in most boxes.
Go hard or don't be a pussy.
Basically. But no, it was, you can either just say you're intermediate or advanced and you just go in and start doing workouts, right? Or you say you're a beginner. And at that moment I was like, oh, I've done gym for 10 years.
Yeah,
I haven't done Olympic lift. And my default assertive is I'm going to go in the day one.
Have you seen how many gym shirts I have?
I was like, I'm going to go in there day one, default assertive, just go ham at this until like I'm passed out on the ground. Usual self. But I actually made this conscious decision. I was like, no, I'm going to go the beginner route. I'm going to see what that's like. Cause I've never been to a CrossFit gym. And just because I think that I've been to a lot of gyms might not translate. I was like, I'm going to step back from default assertive. And I went to these two training sessions. And the guy in particular, which is really cool, Jack, he was walking me through at the very beginning on things that you or me might consider like, well, we know. And I might be rower. Like, so he was like, let's try a push-up. Let me see a push-up. Let me see a squat. Let me see a pull-up. Let me see a front squat, right? Now I'm saying to you all these things, and you're like, you can imagine me. You can imagine me. Me as default would be like, yes, we can do this. Show you. Let's get into a workout. Let's go. But now I step back. I went, you know what? I'm going to humble myself like directly here and say, let's just go through the whole process. Feel like if it was like really new. And guess what? I actually learned heaps of stuff. I actually learned heaps and heaps of stuff that I, in the past, would have been like, oh shit, I wasn't thinking about it. Even in like a pull-up, just with the, like I knew about the hollow position, stuff like that. But just the movement pattern that he wanted me to do and actually did it. I was like, wow, okay, I haven't been doing it like this for a long time. Squats, he was very specific, checking the knee, checking the movements, feeling like he was like, oh, I'll just shift this a little bit. The way I do front squats, well, just doing it with a full sort of hook grip, like I'll say the grip all the way up the top, and just the way he was kind of showing, oh no, you gotta like lock your back and stuff like that. I was like, oh man, this was completely different. I wasn't doing it this way at all. But it just goes to show, I like stepped away from being default assertive in that moment, and it worked out a lot better for me. Now, could I have gone default assertive and just gone stuff? Maybe. But then I would have missed out on those learnings. So I was like, okay. It pointed me to like, okay, try and encapsulate a bit more. Use it more.
That's good, man. So I have been suspicious of your pull-up form for a while now, so I'm not
the best form.
Not surprised.
The best form.
Yeah, I think the critical thing for both of us really is to find, you know, we sort of know our nature, our personalities now, and so really working on the times it works well for us and the times it doesn't, and being able to figure those out.
Yes.
Because it's too hard. Like, I don't think you're ever going to be I just don't ever see you meditating, for example, and being like,
I'm not going to be a Zen master. I'm not going to be a Zen master.
Take it as it comes, sort of just relaxed attitude. No, I think your attitude's always going to be pretty energetic, pretty full on, and you know, there's no real changing that. So it's more just about working with that. You started talking about exercise, so I'll get on to
give me the running.
A little bit about running. It's becoming hard, man. It's becoming really hard. Yeah. So I thought,
so give me some clear numbers.
So some stats. So I break my sort of workout routines into 4-week sections. So let's just say February. Actually, I think it was February 1 to 28. So that was nice. I was doing, I was doing 2 5Ks and 2 10Ks, I believe. That
2
was
5Ks and 2 10Ks.
Yeah,
Yep.
so, you know,
Doable.
30 Ks in a week. It's not too bad. Last month, so that was March, I decided to step it up. All right, I'm going to start doing some half marathons. And that was where I was doing 1 half marathon, and then I believe it was 2 10Ks. So I stepped it up to 40 Ks in total. Then I was like, all right, I don't have that much more time in terms of training for this running. I don't want to be doing this for months and months and months.
Yes.
Like, I want to try and speed this up. I'm going to bank it. Like, I'm going to go hard.
Go for it.
So I said, all right, this month, so roughly May. We're in April, aren't we? Yeah, apologies, April. I want to do 2 half marathons, 2 10Ks, and 30Ks. So that's jumping it up from, 60 Ks up to 90? Is my math right? Yeah, 90. Yeah. And man, I'm feeling it.
And that's per week?
That's per week. Yeah.
Per week. So 90 kilometers per week. Yeah.
And I'm just feeling it, man. So I actually haven't done a full 90 per week. I've actually, I think, still just staying around that 60.
Okay.
No, not staying. Jumped up to the 60 Ks.
Yeah, jumped to 60.
And it's just everywhere, man. Like the calves. So I think my final strategy that I've decided on is I can't. As much as I want to leave stuff in the tank, I can't. I can't do it. I need to run hard and I need to run fast, because what's stopping me now is not that feeling in the core of like your entire being breaking down. It's my legs not wanting to move because my calves are so sore.
Hectic. Yeah.
You were talking once about how running and your arms were getting sore.
Yes. Is that how you were feeling in your legs?
Yeah. So that's what my calves are feeling like now. And so I'm sort of thinking, the only way I can think of getting over this is by covering ground quicker, so therefore running harder in like shorter stints and then walking like a little bit more. Yeah. But I'd need to run harder, essentially.
Yeah, jeez.
And
I just don't know how that strategy is going to go for a marathon, man. I just don't know.
I don't know either. My sort of thinking is, if I can get to a half marathon in 1 hour and 50, that leaves me 2 hours and 10 for another half. I think I can sort of just bullshit my way through that, through a mixture of like shit jogging, walking, some like sprinting again when I feel like I've got like a bit of something
second wind coming back. Yeah.
That's sort of my thinking for it. And psychologically as well, it's playing mind tricks with me. So
okay.
I thought,
in what way?
I thought, you know what, 30K, all right, my plan for this is, all my other stuff before was, I'm just going to do it. 30K, I was like, it's actually 3/4, so it's like 31 point whatever. I'm just going to say 30. My thought was, all right, no, I can be a bit smarter now, and I need to be smarter, because
it's going to be wasting a lot of time.
It's taking a lot of time, so I don't want to, just say, I'm going to do 31K this day, and then start running and realize, oh, this is just a bad day. I'm going to be out here for 4 hours. Yeah. Like, I really don't want that. And I think having that little bit of wiggle room to say, oh, I'll just plan my runs so that I've got an extra 2 hours spare afterwards, so that I can do that.
Push it through when you need to.
Yeah. So when I am doing a really nice run, I'll just keep going. Easy. But having that...
Is it easy?
No. Having that little wiggle room, I'm finding the space to get out of doing it. So,
all right, gotcha.
So even though I was meant to do 2 30Ks in this last 2 weeks, I haven't done. Okay. Just haven't done them. So,
if you had to go back, how would you try to get yourself to have done those 30Ks?
Well, I mean, like it's just a recent realization, so it's not too bad. Honestly, like I'm not beating myself up too much, but it is just a warning sign. Like I know this right now. Just in general, I would have started running more quicker, I think. Okay. So I did like a gradual build up to sort of like 10K a week.
When you say
gradual,
I got
20, like 10K a week for a month, and then 20K a week for a month.
Yes.
I would have probably just upped that up.
Yeah, 30, more. 40, just really quickly.
Just quicker. Or perhaps, maybe even doing it a week by week. So 12K this week, 14K the next week, 16K.
Have you thought about just doing, say, 10K a day?
I'm doing like 5 running days a week now, so that's no. In essence, no.
Okay.
I'm
Would you
not
think
sure
it would
go.
benefit if, say, you didn't want to do 30Ks, but you split up that into, say, 2 15K days? Would you think that would have any benefit?
I'm sort of doing that now anyway. It's
Okay,
like
okay.
all my days, like the smallest run I do is 10K. And funnily enough, 10K feels real easy now.
I was going to say,
10K is just like a breeze, man. It's like,
Yeah.
maximum an hour, but mostly it's like getting closer to like 50 minutes.
Yep.
Fuck, that's so easy.
yeah, it's like doing a 50-minute 10K for you now. It's like, okay, yes, that's
Yeah.
almost a standard.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like it's not psychologically taxing. Even half marathons now are getting like, you know what, I'm pretty comfortable doing this. But yeah, it's the next step up.
Yeah, I just
Next one up.
And obviously we're not professionals here about running, but I can just see
Two amateurs.
I can just see, which is 2 mere mortals, but when I can see that 30K, whatever barrier, I'm afraid for you with the lactic acid buildup, because it just like what you're describing is lactic acid buildup. And like you'll get to a point where you can't drain that out. Like it doesn't drain. Even when you're walking,
Watch me.
it doesn't work. Because I recall this happening with swimming a lot. So once you get to a point where your lactic acid threshold, like you're hitting lactic acid threshold, you're hitting it, and you can hit it up to a point, because then you actually have it. I believe the term of it is like it bleeds into your muscles or into your actual, and at that point you are stopping.
That
you
sounds
are
good.
not
Yeah.
going further.
Yeah.
And like it's just the terminology of it, but I think it's just like that secretion of it basically prevents you from moving at all. Like that is it. You're not, legs are locking, you're not moving. So I just fear that with that much speed and heart rate variability, you're going to hit those points and just go, that's it. That's where it ends.
Fuck it.
But that's what I'm so excited to hear how it goes.
I've never been renowned for doing things the normal way.
Yeah. So
that's
no,
good.
I'm keen to see it. Okay, no, it's cool. I like that. Just a little small one. I listened to a podcast very, very recently. David Asprey and Walter Longos. Dr. Longos. You know who Dr. Longos is?
No, I've never heard that name.
Okay, so Dr. Longos, Italian. He is known almost as
pretty
the
good
father
name.
of fasting. So he's a very interesting dude. And so David Asprey was having a chat with him about fasting. And I was expecting to go in and hear this massive conversation about how good fasting was and all this. And it was really, I really like this dude for the fact that he was putting both perspectives forward. Like he was talking about how good fasting was and all the usual things that you hear about autophagy and everything else. But then he similarly was just like straight up showing cases of, but
This is
recent
where it
studies
went
actually
wrong,
have
or
shown things where, you do this, and then actually wrong. Specifically with fasting around, so he was saying, why do you fast for 12 hours and not for a longer period? And there's Longos, Dr. Longos was having a conversation about, most recently they started finding that people who were going 14, 16 hours and beyond actually were more susceptible to cancer increase and other mortality increases. Now, that is a particular journal on particular people. I don't even know what their background was. But what I enjoyed about what he was saying is, even though he was like an absolute massive pro fasting person, he was like out there kind of showing both sides of the, like debating almost himself with a lot of items that he found across. So I was like, wow, very cool. So Dr. Longos, well done. I really enjoyed that. But one of the other things that they were talking about was plugging the holes of supplementation, sort of things that you might have to supplement for, nutrients that you might be missing. And I was also listening to another podcast where they were talking about similar things. What are the 4 supplements that you must have or you're not having enough? And some of them were like magnesium, zinc, etc. Now, I know you're not a big pro person when it comes to the macronutrients or the minerals and all that sort of stuff. Could you see yourself ever thinking from a nutritional perspective like, maybe I need to plug in some of these items where I'm missing things with supplements? Or like other areas of life where like, maybe I'll plug this in with an exogenous material or something else?
Yeah. My problem with supplementing like that way is, from what I've understood, it's always just you're meant to feel this slight increase. And basically, it's almost like you have to take things on faith in that, or your iron level should be at this level for you to feel good. And the times that I have tried supplements, I'm pretty much convinced that it was just placebo. If I felt anything good, like seriously looking at it, I would say I can't point at anything and being like, yeah, that's like, that made this huge difference for me. I was reading something about paracetamol the other day, and it was saying, yeah, actually a lot of paracetamol is just the placebo. There's, even though it's one of those drugs which is meant to be like definitive, actually does have an increased, effect in terms of pain relief. And then it was, it's just one random study, so who knows? But that's sort of how I sort of view it. The same thing in terms of supplements. I'm having to take on just trust that
from someone else,
that it's having an effect on me, and also here's my money, a constant revenue stream for you to keep telling me that I'm unwell because X. So I could see myself, but I would need to have just some sort of very like big breakthrough event of me being seriously unwell and being able to fix it with a supplement of some sort, or just some sort of like really well crafted argument to get me to do it. And because just right now I feel pretty good in general, so I'm trying to imagine like what it would be like to feel even better, which is the whole point of supplementing, to feel better, I guess.
It's such an interesting point, because I can see it in some ways on that, because I personally, like, say with paracetamol or Panadol, I'm just like, no, why do I take it?
Yeah, just doesn't do shit.
No, it probably does, but I just don't, like, if it's Panadol,
I don't
whatever,
notice
deal
it,
with it. I'm like, whatever,
okay,
serious. I'm just like, no, do matter. But when it comes to, say, omega-3s from fish oils, or from fish in general, or krill oil, or whatever it may be. So they're talking about in this podcast, it's like, there's been some studies proving that after only just a couple of weeks, it increases your memory, retention, and all these other things from your brain by 30-something%, right? Now, I've been having fish oil on and off for many years. And I can't tell you that. I can distinctly say, like, oh, wow, I took this and, like, amazing, it increased my memory. Like, if it's notable, it might, like, well, I would say it's not notable. If it's actually causing that, like, I didn't even perceptualize that actually happening at all. So there's sometimes when I'll still take it because there are enough studies out there that I'm like, okay, I believe in the fact that it is doing it. But if it's actually practically doing something, maybe not. But I almost go on the side of, not all the way to Dave Asprey's level, but on the side of, okay, I will take it because just in case it is doing something that's positive and it isn't creating it negative. Obviously, that's a certain point. If you're taking 3 million things and it's like costing you all this money and it's doing like negative to you, okay, well, shit. Go and change something. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't just like forget about food and just be doing supplementation. Like, that's also stupidity. But for me, I'm like, a balance, even if I sometimes don't feel it, is okay. Like, I'm happy to plug a hole that I perceive is there, even though I don't technically feel a difference much from it. But like, there's things for me for sure, like magnesium, I can definitely tell there's a difference for sleeping or for recovery. So I'm like, okay, well, that I'm happy to spend the money. I'm probably not getting enough in the normal diet. Cool.
Yeah. I think that's just one of those things where I'm sort of not willing to take that that on faith argument of like just in case sort of thing. That's just not up my alley. Very good. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about silence as well. So finding comfort in silence. And we've talked about this in podcasting in the past about leaving that silence gap, and things can happen in that silence through the other person filling it, giving more detail. You're not missing out on subtle cues that could be coming in, all those sorts of good stuff. I just had a couple of instances this week of where this was really good. So one was where I was out on a date, actually, one, and we were just out in like a sort of like restaurant-y like vibe setting of just overlooking. It was actually at the place you hate in Joey's.
Joey's got good place to look at. Good place for a lookout.
Yeah. And one, there was this kid who was just running around and doing all these things, like just acting up, like being a cute little kid, I guess.
Did you throw him off the cliff?
I was tempted to. In the past, I would have been like, I'm in the middle of a conversation and then kid like interrupts, and I'd sort of be like uncomfortable in that silence that develops where the girl I'm with is like paying attention to the kid and doing all these other things. And I was just like, okay. and I'll just let this play out.
Yep.
And so then I was just, chilling there for like 30 seconds. And I felt super comfortable in it. Whereas in the past, it'd be like,
no way, you gotta fill it in.
What do I do now? Like, like the attention's on me, but it's not on me. And that sort of thing. Then the other one was actually in our friend Matt's B-Day party. Matt from Convo number 45.
Yep.
He was, just plenty of times where I was, in the past I would have been very uncomfortable with like talking or something. Then someone moves away and I'm like on my own. What do I do now? Or it's going to look weird because I'm not talking with anyone, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And I'm just cool, like just chilling out. Something will come up. I can make something happen, but also not. So a couple of questions from this. Have you, what are you thinking if you're intentionally extending a silence? So if you're using silence for effect, do you find yourself thinking about that, or do you get into the? Because I'm noticing I'm getting into almost like a meditative zone where it's just like I just zone out. I don't think.
There was no real thought going on.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would say it depends on the context. There'd be some where I do put silence in play in a professional sense, in a work sense, and there wouldn't be really too much going through my mind, but they're like the silence is a play for a reason to sort of garner a particular response or to actually get the truth. So again, like for me, the silence there is being comfortable to talk to someone where something might be wrong, or I'm trying to get them to either own something or tell me what's gone wrong without me having to jump in and asking that question and being completely comfortable to just stand and stare at them for like 30 seconds until they say something, like to go, why did this sort of eventuate, or why did this happen? And then saying, I don't know. I'm happy to just have a nice silence in front of them just to be able to be like, get them to think like, okay, well, that obviously isn't a good enough answer.
Yeah, that's not
think
correct.
It through.
Yeah.
So I'm totally happy. And in those cases, I think because it's such a focus on the conversation, there's no real thought going. I'm just waiting for that response. In other silences, though, mine would just like run wild in terms of just like thinking about other completely different things.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I've ever had I think the last time I was uncomfortable with silence would have been like high school days, like early high school days. Because even just prior to high school days, the silence wouldn't be uncomfortable because I just wouldn't be able to speak English anyway. So it was like not uncomfortable. It was just like I didn't even know. I was just like in my own head, so it was fine. And when I was able to speak English, but I was hanging out with like a couple of friends, it was like, I was a little bit uncomfortable, and I'd try to fill a lot of the silence with loudness, talking, and doing lots of things and activities. But then they probably got to a point where that still occurred, but if there was silence, it was like totally fine. And in fact, I've done now where like, stupidly, I've been talking to people and like, they just piss me off, and so I just don't talk to them for like half an hour. I'm just walking along and they're just talking. I'm like, whatever. Like, it's not even
just to teach them.
Straight silence. So I think I've not mastered it, but I've been able to put silence into play quite a bit in a good state. But I think it is good to become comfortable in the silence.
For sure. That silence you were talking about where you can't speak it's more a frustrating silence. It's I want to contribute to this social situation or this conversation or whatever's going on, but I can't. And that's more of a frustrating thing rather than uncomfortable. Yep. And then that leads into, have you had many experiences culturally wise between like difference, how people use silence differently, or just the natural ambient level of silence in a conversation in comparison between like Australians and Colombians, or so I've never particularly seen this because I just don't know that many Eastern Europeans, but I've heard they're way more comfortable with just long gaps where nothing gets said, nothing's going on. You're sort of in the same place, sitting together, eating together, meant to be at like a bar drinking together, and it's just, you just sit there with the other person.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced it with people. I wouldn't know if it's
not like a cultural
selectively
thing.
A cultural thing. Not that I've experienced. I would say that I would tend to say that people who maybe have experienced a lot of traumatic events or things where it's like real extremes, that they might have such a comfort in just very small things that we might not even perceive as it. They'd be like, they're just enjoying sitting down and not having to work 20 hours a day or something like that. Okay, I'm like, okay, maybe in the silence they're just like, wow, how great is this? So maybe there'd be some level of that. I've met people, okay, say Jordan Peterson is comfortable with silence. So I listen to him on 1.2, 1.5 sometimes, and even then, some of the conversations that he's having lately, and when people ask him questions, that's a pretty long pause. Even then, so he's comfortable in the silence to produce a precise answer. So I'm like, okay, well, there's people also that are out there who are putting it probably in a, whether it's conscious or subconscious, I don't know, but putting it effectively. I'm trying to think of someone use silence.
Actually, that's a good question. Have you ever had a silence before you've responded? Because your default assertive nature would probably want words to come out straight away. So, like, if I asked you a question, how often would you really extend a silence out to think about it and not just immediately say something?
All right, I'd say 70% of the time would be default, like, start talking, go, solution time.
Yeah.
30% of the time,
start talking over Kyrin because you already know the question he's asking. And
yes, exactly how it works. 70% I've already answered the question before you even speak it, and 30% of the time I will take a silence and think through. Okay, process it. What's the best options? Go through it in my mind. Okay, let's go with this approach because of this reason. Cool. Move on. Yeah. What would be your percentage?
Probably more than that. Okay. Probably a larger percentage of me being able to just sit there for an extra second or two that if I need it and just go, But I would probably...
Would you be comfortable with 30 seconds?
At this stage, probably not. I'd probably need some practice doing that, or that'd need to be a real willful one.
I think I'd have to say to them something like, hey, let me think.
Yeah, let me think about that.
And then go through in your mind sort of thing. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to just be like...
There would be a tendency for me to make a noise of some sort as well, just to show that I'm thinking.
Although I have heard about this, and I don't know which one of the tech giants it was, whether it was Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or it might have been Apple's. One of them, anyways. One of those like tech giant CEOs or founders. One of their interview styles would be that they'd come in, they'd ask you a question, or you'd ask them a question and you'd respond or not respond, and they would just sit there for a minute and stare at you. And you'd have to just see, and they were waiting to see how you would react in the silence and that uncomfortableness. And that was part of the interview. And I was like, man, that would be pretty freaky. What a weird way to incite some sort of action or some sort of reaction from someone. But damn, yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah,
some people are applying there. If you're a businessman or have a business or a businesswoman, you want to hire people? Maybe do that.
Yes,
stare them in the face.
I would almost think of that as a power play. Like, what the hell's wrong with Bill Gates that he's doing this to me? What's going on here?
I would just, I think I would just also stare back at them, wait to see who spoke first. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win, Bill. Yeah. I'm gonna win. All right, I think that's pretty much it. I'm gonna go with me immortal moment.
Please do.
For me, default assertiveness is good until it's not.
Nice and snappy, short, gets to the point. Mine is not like that. The quietest people, monks, mutes, dead people, wrong. God level silence, Mr. Bean. That's it, folks.
Mr. Bean is the man.
He's the best. He's excellent. The OG of silence.
Well, as you were listening, folks, were you default assertiveness thinking?
I reckon they were default silence in listening to every single drop of wisdom that was coming out of our
I bet you were.
mouths.
You have to, just taking it in, trying to find where the Easter eggs are. Where are the animals? Where's
They're all around.
Rana Roja? Where's... What do you call it now? Poppy the Possum?
I think it was Poppy the Possum.
Yeah. Poppy the Possum. Right here, folks. Right here. If you want to keep on watching and, of course, finding out all the Easter eggs, hearing the wisdom, default listening. That's what it's called. It's default listen to the Immortals podcast. So when you wake up in the morning and you think, what do I do with all the spare time I have? You listen to the Immortals podcast. That's what you do. You don't even have to think about it. It's just what you do.
And tell 10 of your friends. Damn,
exactly. It's like a tongue twister.
Tell 10 of your 10
Tell 10 of your friends.
Tweetos.
Tell 10 Tito's to watch the Immortals podcast.
That's it.
That's all from us, folks. Do all the normal thing. Subscribe, follow, like, etc. Comment, say hello. But for now, that's it. Juan out. Cool.